Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Sustainability and Climate Commission's Policy and Implementation Committee meeting. I am co-chair Charity Fain, she, her pronouns. So welcome to our meeting today. I'd like to acknowledge co-chair Vivek. I'm not sure if he's here yet. Are we expecting him? I think so. Um, and then to just acknowledge that Chief Sustainability Officer Vivian Satterfield is here with us today and will later provide briefings in response to last month's meeting and continue getting our input on committee next steps to set our agenda moving forward. So thank you. And next slide. You can see we have our agenda. We will go over public comment if possible, and then hear a briefing and a couple of briefings before we moved into some discussion and feedback. And the outcomes that we hope for this meeting today will be a shared understanding of the city leaders' climate priorities as as of today, a shared understanding of some committee priorities discussed in last month's meeting and that is in the city context around those priorities. We will also have some discussions and recommendations to CSO on committee next steps, and CSO will set our agendas moving forward. So next slide, thank you. Move into meeting intros and reminders. Yep, thank you. We'll talk about some of our typical notes and working agenda. So next slide. Just as a reminder to everyone, we are being recorded. Commissioners, please ensure your Zoom name reflects your title. Raise your hand to speak, as always, and a facilitator will call on you. Please remember to state your name every time you speak. And if there's public comment, individuals will be called on. If you need tech help, please let Wing know. Next slide. Can I get a commissioner to volunteer to read the bold sections out loud, please? Anyone
Sure.
volunteer? Thank you,
Sure.
Angus.
Yeah. Okay. Speak with clarity and focus. Wait. Assume good intentions, but attend to impact. Be willing to make mistakes and be forgiving of those who do. That's an important one for me. Allow for and appreciate disagreement of opinions, ideas, methods. Respectfully build on other people's ideas. We value participation both in person and virtual.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Angus. I think we are moving on. I don't believe we have public comment today. Is that correct? Okay. Then we can move on. I'm assuming if co-chair, normally I would switch this over to co-chair Vivek, but he is not here. Do you want me to just
Oh, I'm
continue?
here.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I've been here. I've just been
Nah,
hanging out in the back.
okay. Sorry, I did not see you. So I'm passing it on to you.
Okay. Um, we're moving into briefing city leaders on climate priorities. I think we have about half an hour for this agenda item. So we want to, next slide. Um, so here's where I'm kind of wanting, I guess, a little more clarification on how we're pursuing this particular agenda item.
Yeah, Co-Chair Vivek, thanks for the question. This is my portion
Okay.
to offer you all a briefing on here. So unless
Yep.
you've got additional framing, I can take it from here.
Got it. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, turn it over to you, CSO.
Awesome. Thank you, Co-Chair Charity. Thank you, Co-Chair Vivek. Members of the committee, it's great to be here today. For the record, Vivian Satterfield, I'm your Chief Sustainability Officer. Use she, her, or my name as pronouns. And I'm pleased to join you here today. The goal of this agenda is to offer some shared understanding of current city leaders' climate priorities as they're known today. So Today I'm actually going to be very briefing heavy in today's meeting. You're going to hear a lot from me. And so I'm going to try my best to pace the conversation and offer opportunities for clarification as we go through here. So again, these are some of the share outs that I'm doing around climate priorities from our city leaders. Next slide, please. And the predominant leader that I'm talking about is our elected mayor, Keith Wilson, in terms of who's sharing out their stated priorities. Mostly that's because as we know, City Council is still formulating the different changes in their committee structure. Issues of climate will be seen at City Life. And then I also believe that Committee of the Whole will also be able to hear a number of different climate priorities. And also we had the aforementioned previous version of this, which was the Climate Resilience and Land Use Committee. But these, for the purposes of today, I'm going to be sharing out Mayor Wilson's climate concepts. Some areas of inspiration, obviously the mayor is a sustainability leader in his own right. In his prior profession and also with his stated platform, having run for mayor, but most recently was inspired by the World Conference of Mayors and through the City of Portland's membership participation in C40 cities. It's at no cost to us that we're a member of C40 cities. I can share more about what that means. But essentially, we were able to go and travel for the World Conference of Mayors ahead of the global climate negotiations. And that's where the mayor was further inspired by a number of elected leaders internationally. And a discrete number of his goals are also articulated in what's called the Portland's Promise, his agenda for the next few years. That is a hyperlinked slide. Maybe Elaine can help me drop it in the chat if you have not seen it, which is the mayor's platform. And I'll just highlight that a number of these goals are articulated there, such as a switch to renewable diesel and electric vehicles in the city's fleet by 2030, support planning for regional high-speed rail, expanding street sweeping operations within the city of Portland, his vision to reduce traffic deaths to the lowest level in a decade. Part of that is also through Vision Zero work. And then to regain the national leading role that Portland has had in the bike mode split for transportation. And so that link has more information. There's other obviously goals in there, but I want to just go ahead and pull out that a number of his goals are articulated there when it comes to climate concepts. There's also concepts from different service areas within the city that currently exist that align with the city's overarching climate goals that he is considering and hearing as he's getting a familiarity and understanding with that. And also we are continually doing the dedicated work of crosswalking with our emissions inventory, which you're well familiar with, to demonstrate the data supported actions for those. Next slide, please. I'll be going into further detail about some of his articulated goals around some of these topics. So I've kind of grouped them into more generalized areas to help us see how they interrelate and how they possibly map back to our climate emissions inventory. So these concepts I would put into the built environment, the urban form. The mayor is interested in building decarbonization, not only for existing buildings, carbon emission removal, but also for the construction of new buildings as well, as articulated by the low carbon construction. And we have a number of different programs that currently exist within city service areas that has been evaluating both of these concepts, not only new construction decarbonization policy options, as well as low carbon construction. I'll be sharing more as we go further and take a deeper dive on the building decarbonization. So I'm going to ask you to kind of hold that in your thoughts now, because I will be sharing more about that later. And then on this slide, I wanted to just share out that, of course, the mayor has been very interested in the embodied carbon potential of doing office to residential conversions as well. And we currently do have a pilot of one of the office to residential conversions within the city of Portland. Next slide, please. And this will be about the clip that I'm moving through these. So if I'm moving too fast or if you have a detail of that, please feel free to raise your Zoom hand or give me a visual signal, and I can try to pause. There's an entire grouping, obviously, under mobility. As we all know, transportation accounts for the disproportionate amount of GHG emissions. And so Mayor Wilson has articulated a number of concepts related to mobility, such as I mentioned before, as articulated in Portland's Promise, reclaiming Portland's leading role in cycling infrastructure and culture and helping to create the incentives to move the needle on the bike mode split. More car-free zones. Mayor, I think, was really inspired also by the time that we were in the World Conference of Mayors in Rio, in which there's plenty of car-free zones to move through. Was inspired also by his colleagues both in Paris and in London, who've been dedicating more spaces to car-free zones on a temporary or like weekend basis for activation. And then what that sort of does in the public imagination for reimagining those spaces as being more frequent to, being restricted to vehicular traffic. He's also interested in what's called climate smart street surfaces. Those are sort of street surface innovations to address climate change and maintenance costs. There are some specific technologies that we are looking into as part of our participation in the Smart Surfaces Coalition. So this is an arena in which we're putting down additional infrastructure. How can we look at those technologies that can offer greater sustainability, durability, and even help contribute to additional cooling corridors? Obviously, electric vehicles are here. We want to make them more readily available and to help expand the infrastructure that we have to allow for residential, but also visitor charging all throughout our city. The mayor has also stated a great interest in helping to further a plan for the regional high-speed rail. This is I just put it in a rendering of what that could look like here with that. And so different ways we've talked about this include Cascadia high-speed rail or regional high-speed rail. Those are all the same concepts. And I do believe that in the mayor's current proposed budget, that he's also proposing to allocate some additional resources to help support this long-term planning effort. Excuse me for one moment while I take a drink of water. As I mentioned in the Portland's Promise agenda for the mayor, he's also interested in having all new electric fleet purchases by 2030, of course, for city operations. And a moonshot goal wants to challenge our regional transit provider as well to join in that goal of electrifying their fleet as well. And the last two concepts, one was articulated in Portland's Promise, which is to expand street sweeping to all corners of the city. And I think the metric that he landed on, and I hope I'm not wrong in saying this, was 20,000 street miles cleaned. And then pricing the car use in the right of way. And so there's a lot of different ways that I think technical practitioners talk about what that looks like, whether it's congestion pricing, whether it's vehicles miles traveled, but the whole concept is pricing the car use, private vehicular use in the right of way that the city of Portland maintains. So those are all sort of bucketed under this general concept of mobility, whether it's from making the experience of cycling and walking more accessible by having cleaner streets, all the way to regional, connecting us to the region with a vision of high-speed rail. The next slide, please. Thank you, Elaine. And so the next area that he's interested in, I've kind of bucketed into this talking about energy and resiliency. As we all know, the conversation and awareness around the impact of hyperscale data centers is definitely front of mind for anyone working in the climate and sustainability space. And so while we were at the World Conference of Mayors back in November, Mayor Wilson did sign the city of Portland onto a responsible data center agreement, which puts him into conversation and in cooperation with cities around the United States and around the world in talking about what responsible data center agreements can look like for municipalities. Here focused in the United States as not only a part of Climate Mayors, which is another network that he is an active participant in, but also again through C40, Mayors from across the country, US based, are coming together to talk about different tools that Portland does have available and some tools Portland doesn't utilize in order to tackle the issue of and the impact of data centers within their communities. I will offer that I've done some preliminary research alongside our Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to understand what the impact of data centers currently are, because we do have data centers within our community. However, I want to be really clear that the focus of a lot of these conversations is on the large scale, what's called hyperscale data centers. And currently our land use in Portland doesn't allow for that sort of development to happen, but we want to be in conversation and want to support the efforts of mayors across the country, but also here in Oregon, as many communities are burdened and trying to figure out quickly how they can respond to the significant land use, energy, and water uses of these hyperscale data centers. One of the areas in which the mayor and I are in strong agreement is that we do need a municipal energy strategy. And so this is one area that we are talking about because, of course, the city of Portland is a consumer of energy. We also have some unique spaces that we participate in as a municipality that we could help influence at the PUC with our investor-owned utilities. And to help further our own interests in keeping utility rates low and reliable for all of our public-facing facilities. And then the mayor does care deeply, obviously, about what happens in severe weather and has articulated his interest in sheltering and expanding sheltering operations and preserving that aspect of the work the city does. Also as being responsive to severe weather to help vulnerable communities. The next slide, please. This is an area which I think is an area in which we could be on the leading edge in a number of arenas, but really puts us in conversation with other public sector partners and also private sector partners as well. The mayor has been extremely supportive of the Renewable Fuel Standard program, which exists at the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And, you know, of course, because of his prior work in transportation and in trucking, has always been very interested in phasing out petroleum diesel. So is continuing to express an interest in doing that, not just at the pump through our Renewable Fuel Standard, but also on our waterways. And also through the movement of goods in rail yards as well. And so this is an area in which I've had some preliminary conversations, both with the Port of Portland, and also have done a little bit of research to try to understand where we could have influence or could be in conversation to have shared goals when it comes to our heavy rail providers as well. Think Union Pacific, think BNSF. And then he was quite inspired by the good work of, I think, the mayor in Paris and the mayor in London, specifically, who have really worked on these public messaging campaigns using the mayor's platform and using the mayor's voice to help build grassroots support in the community for actions that have a positive impact on air quality. You know, in Portland, I think a lot of folks think that, you know, our water is so clear and our air must be very clean. But the reality, if you have anyone who suffers from asthma or sensitivity within your household or perhaps yourself, you know that we do have poor air quality days. And so there is a nexus between ways that we can help shift the modes that people travel in and just help shift some awareness. You know, and the impact that it has on our regional air quality and our city's air quality as well. So this is a bit more of a concept that has to do with public awareness, has to do with the mayor sort of being the face of helping to build support and awareness for people around our air quality and actions they can directly take. I'm going to go ahead and pause there before I start talking about this slide, only to see, because I covered a lot of different concepts from a very skimmed level, to see if there's any clarifying questions right now.
It looks like Angus, Commissioner Angus, you have your hand up?
I do. So I don't know if this is a clarifying question, but excuse me, but there are a lot of ideas here, some of which have a direct impact on emissions, some of which have a pretty oblique impact on emissions. And in a couple of cases, it's hard, like street sweeping, it's hard for me to see what the connection is at all, which doesn't mean they're not good ideas. You know, most of them are. And, you know, this is a mayor that tends to gravitate toward good ideas. But I guess I hope that, and many of them can be wrapped into the larger uh, uh, commission, council, city action plan that is also on our agenda. But I guess I would encourage us to come back and just remind ourselves that in essence, there are really three areas where we ought to focus on, you know, what can be asked for, what can be done in a relatively short period of time that will have significant impact on emissions, and I would say on built environment emissions and on transportation emissions, and then on resiliency, on dealing with climate impacts on the people in Portland, and that we try to pick out one or two actions in each of these three areas where we think they meet a test of, they are significant, they will have significant impacts, and those impacts can be felt relatively soon, but have continuing long-term, contributions to the city's climate program and to just the working of the city. So those three areas, built environment, transportation, and resiliency. And I could certainly pick things out from, what the mayor has identified as, as things he would like to pursue. And I suspect each of us can do that. So I hope that we will proceed in sort of that general direction unless somebody has a better idea. And if so, I am open to hearing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Angus. Any other feedback, thoughts, questions for CSO Vivian?
I do have one additional slide, taking a slightly deeper dive on the building decarbonization, but I see that Commissioner Jose has their hand raised.
Yes, I know we're going to get into conversations about priorities later in the presentation, but the one question I had, are there parts of this, because I know this is just his platform, so are there pieces from this platform that are already being worked on?
Yes, Commissioner Jose, that's an excellent question. I would say that to various degrees, these all have, for the lack of a better term, they've all been kicked the tires on, at least at the very minimum. There's been some preliminary conversations. I mean, once the mayor shared that these were his concepts and ideas, they've all had some sort of surface analysis done, kind of baseline understanding of like where we're at. Some of them are much further than that. For example, car-free streets, we have a history here in the city of Portland of already enacting programs like that at the Bureau of Planning the Bureau of Planning and Transport, or PBOT, Bureau of Transportation. So some of them, there's more robust understanding of some of them. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, of course, this is all sort of contingent on staff resources and budget as well, that would help further the mayor's goals. But they're all varying levels. And at the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, I have asked the climate team staff to do a really kind of like rough analysis that examines the sort of like 4 levers that we look at as staff: cost, the climate decarbonization benefit, what is the benefit to community and economic development, and then what is the level of complexity. And so I have that like high level analysis that sort of visually offers a toggle, and I have shared that with the mayor just to give him a surface level understanding of if we had additional resources and staffing dedication to this is where you can kind of start to see where we'd have to really go deep, for example, because it's very complex, on, I don't know, I will go ahead and just offer office to residential. If we want to do more than one pilot, right? It's going to probably be something where we need additional resources. An area of other complexity, for example, or like where we can go really deep on cost, utilizing permanent car-free zones likely is going to have like a high infrastructure cost on that, but really scores really high on community economic development, for example, for those businesses, for community. So I'll just go ahead and offer that we've done to varying degrees an analysis, and for some of these programs that are much further along. I would say some of the more underdeveloped ideas, just because of the relationship and complexity, actually is what you see here on this slide.
Thank you, CSO Vivian. Since I have the floor, I just ask a question myself before you go into decarbonization. To add to Commissioner Angus's comment, I think there might be opportunities to also not discretely divide up the emissions and resiliency concepts that I think the commission has talked about, though finding those potential overlaps and synergies that could happen in this agenda. For example, just thinking about the pollution reduction slide that you had in relation to decarbonization goals, and just thinking that there's several ways to improve the community's health and well-being as a result of reductions in pollution, and the kind of I think the grassroots approach that had been identified, which can also help in broader awareness and engagement opportunities around understanding pollution, especially during wildfire events and things that might be of particular concern, especially for those who don't have central air filtration and other systems that could reduce. So, I mean, I guess to say that there are many of those kinds of examples that would help to synergistically tie some of these priorities together that we want to keep in mind. That may not have directly a cost associated to it, which might make them more palatable for the mayor as well. Commissioner Angus.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Vivek, and I would second your motion, and I think that as we dig into these, we will find a lot of those synergies. I'll just mention one, since it came up, it comes up right here, and that is phasing out petroleum diesel. We identified that with respect to both private vehicles, city vehicles, and TriMet vehicles. And I was among a number of folks that met with TriMet extensively for probably a year and a half or so, and finally got to an agreement whereby TriMet said it would phase out its diesel fleet, that every year it replaces a certain percentage of that fleet, and that it would commit to replacing those replacement vehicles that are brought on would be electric. So doesn't mean that we change the fleet out all at once. Does mean that we end up with buses that both emit less and are cleaner, so that there is cleaner air. And if we're able to link that together with pricing car use in the right of way, we could end up in a situation where we also extend transit use in ways I've suggested in earlier meetings, by making it free, but also by making transit movement through the city quicker, and therefore cleaner and more efficient. So there are a bunch of ways that these things can be pieced together into an affirmative strategy. I guess I would caution against trying to pull all those things together at this stage, because I think the place to do that is in the climate action plan. But it doesn't mean that, if we come up with 3 or 4 actions that we want to propose, be moved on sooner rather than later, and sooner than the climate action plan. We can certainly talk about what the ancillary, collateral effects are, that are going to be mostly affirmative. There may be some negatives we need to identify as well, but all of that, I think, speaks to the value of the observation that you made. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Angus. CSO Vivian, do you want to continue maybe with the decarbonization slide?
Yeah,
we
thank you
can-
so much.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks so much. Co-Chair Vivek, let's go ahead and so we've got, I just see Elaine's note here. We've got 15 minutes left for this agenda item, which I do feel is adequate for us to cover this. I want to go ahead and just do a deeper dive on building decarbonization. This is one of the concepts that I think has had the most amount of work done. And so the context for this is that the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability has been evaluating decarbonizing policy options already. This actually happened, the history for it, and maybe I can ask for Elaine's support in dropping a link to the HART standards work. And you can go ahead and peruse and see a bit of the community-backed history that helps support this action. And so what the BPS staff have been doing is exploring not only NOx limits, but also working with various community partners to examine how we can tackle current existing buildings, mostly focusing on the communities who are most impacted, low-income renters in non-subsidized housing. It's kind of like the open market for rental housing. And there has been an initial proposal to develop what's called the climate and health standards policy concept to sort of tackle the decarbonization of existing commercial and multifamily buildings that are over 20,000 square feet. Also want to offer that that BPS has been examining what regional appliance standards could be applied to decarbonize buildings under 20,000 square feet. There is a kind of constellation of current case law and other concepts that staff have been tracking and working with our legal teams and closely looking at to see what could be allowable. So that's why I'm sort of offering the specificity of some of these this research that's already been done, like regional appliance standards at this certain square footage of building. Why are we focusing on multifamily buildings? There's a little bit of precedent to help direct our attention in these areas. As of this time, BPS has commissioned economic analyses for decarbonization of both new buildings and existing buildings to try to understand the rightful concern around building upgrades and what it could do to potentially displace, especially the most economic vulnerable tenants within those buildings, and have the greatest price sensitivity to rent increases that a building owner could potentially be passing on to renters. And so all of that information has led to some preliminary community engagement for these policy options. Because this work has had a fairly significant number of years in the lead up, not only in our prior form of government, but then also led into the transition of our current form of government. Some of that work was put on pause and for the aforementioned change in government. But we have seen council renew their interest in understanding the work that was sort of put on pause. And so specifically, Councilor Avalos has taken a great interest in this arena, and staff have packaged off all of that work and handed it over to Councilor Avalos for consideration. And so that's why right now I want to just identify that the sort of lead, the person who's helping to lead on this, is currently at council, and staff are working in cooperation to help support any concepts that may be coming out of that council office. My latest understanding is that council office is quite interested in this work on especially the existing buildings package, and is potentially considering moving some work forward as early as this summer, this June and July, to put this out for additional public comment and perhaps even draft city code. So that's as much as I feel like I can share with my current knowledge base on sort of the history and where it's currently at. But I'll go ahead and pause there for questions and or discussion.
Thanks, CSO Vivian. Commissioner Angus, is your hand up from last time? Okay, I will No, no response. Okay, Commissioner Charity, I see your hand up.
Hi, yeah, Commissioner Charity again. Um, so is the question here, I guess, on this kind of topic, um, the briefing on this, they're looking to take some of the previous work with council already and already in a place where they would be possibly discussing moving some of these into out of policy and into code finally. Right. So it's a little farther along than a lot of the other topics
Yes.
because there's already this backlog of work. And for full disclosure, my organization did help work on the HART standards, and we were very involved in that. Um, so obviously I supportive of any kind of work that is around building decarbonization, especially with impacts on low income communities. Um, I am curious though, because we work mainly not on rental housing. So has there been much? I don't think so really on single family homes. There's work being done, right? But to kind of delving into code changes really around single family homes is not really there yet, right? It's really been focusing on rental housing through this work.
Yeah, thanks for the question. My understanding is that because of the priority populations and of course the impact of the deadly heat dome in 2021 was disproportionately in people living in multifamily apartments. That work has been, the area of this work has been focusing on
Yeah.
multifamily apartments. I will offer that the Portland Clean Energy Fund has been sort of tackling that single family home aspects. And there's, I think, a number of programs both from the city, but also within our community that helps folks who may be, you
Yeah.
know, need that support in the single family home area as well.
Yeah, I just clarify because we are at just so there's this disclosure too. Like my organization, we work on energy friendly homes. We're part of the implementers of that, and do a lot of single family homes. So I was just like refreshing my memory, maybe that like yeah, this really hasn't been a lot of work on policy or setting new standards around code or for that. We've really not. We've really stuck to multifamily.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I will offer that later in our discussion today, I will be talking about kind of existing and new buildings and then new construction as well. But
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little different. Yeah,
Yeah, it's very different than like existing.
correct.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Angus, I see your hand up.
Yeah, sorry. I I was blathering away on mute and when you called on me earlier. So,
Okay.
but I'll master this technology someday. So I had two questions for Vivian. The first one is I guess whether I, whether it makes sense for us to pick this up and and advocate it if it already is on its way, through council and it's got support within council, and we might want to endorse it, but I don't think if we advocate it, are we changing the status quo at all? And my sense is that we are not. And I'd like to focus, our energies and attention on things that will change the status quo. But, Vivian, maybe you can clarify that.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Commissioner Angus. I do think that if this policy was passed, it would absolutely change the status quo. This would have a significant impact, and I think that the stakeholders who want to maintain the status quo, you'll see how they think about any change
Yeah,
in
yeah.
their response to the public comment. In terms of I cannot speak to whether or not this has broad support on council. I just wanted to share the one councilor who I know is leading on this is Councilor Avalos. So I do not know if this has broad support on council.
Okay, and I expressed myself badly. What I meant was uh, advocating for a change in business usual as usual at city council, and as opposed to endorsing this. I absolutely agree. This is a big step forward for the city if it
Mm-hmm.
gets passed and adopted. And I would be gratified if our commission endorsed it and
Yeah.
helped it through the council. But I guess what I'm saying is, so what is the council not considering right now that we think it ought to, that would change the status quo? And that's where I'm trying to get to with a policy committee agenda. So
Mhm.
just leave that at that.
Yep.
The other question had to do with appliance standards, and I'm not sure what we mean by appliances in this case. So I thought you could clarify it, because certainly if by appliances we mean furnaces, air conditioning, and heat pumps, then I am 100% in support of it. If we mean and hot water heaters, heat pump hot water heaters, if we mean refrigerators and stoves, uh, while I agree we need to convert, electric resistance and gas ranges to induction, that should be a lower priority because it simply doesn't change the emissions status quo at anywhere near the level that we would need it to move. So if by appliances we mean, so the question is, by appliances, do we mean furnaces, uh, heat pump, heat pump, uh, space conditioning, and heat pump water conditioning?
I will have to defer to my subject matter experts within BPS to help clarify about what specific appliances, just to be clear.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, maybe we can find that out. I just want us to be identifying things that will move the needle in visible and significant ways, and not in incidental ones.
I hear you. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I see Commissioner Jose's hand up. It kind of blends in with the books there. It was hard to see.
Sorry, changing the color makes it worse. Actually, I tried.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think this might be better for the later conversation, but since Commissioner Angus brought it up, I completely disagree that if something's already being worked on at council, we should go for something completely new. Because until something passes at council, it is not guaranteed. And it'd be much easier to lend our backing to big things that might move the needle a lot, that already have some support, and try to get enough support to get it over the finish line, than get something completely new and then neither get over the finish line. So for me, I think one of the things maybe we'll talk about later is getting all these priorities and seeing what's being done, whose venue is it? Is it a city administrator, mayor led thing, or is it something that has to go through council? And then finding out who the stakeholders are and researching what is already have a little bit of support, that maybe we can make it have more support so that we can actually get it done. There isn't the budget or the will to get everything done. So if there's already projects that people have that they're already thinking about that could fit in what we're trying to do, it might be better to just help them get those across the finish line until we're in a budget climate that to go after brand new things.
Okay. Thanks, Commissioner Jose. Commissioner Angus, you want a quick follow-up? We have
Yeah,
only a
just
couple of
quick
minutes left.
follow-up. I just want to say that, I subject myself to Commissioner Jose's correction. I certainly agree that until it's a done deal, it's not a done deal. And as I suggested earlier, I do think this is one that we could and should endorse in, whatever communication we're making to the council. And maybe it's so important that it bumps other things out of the way. That's what we have to decide. And I hope that there's some other things that are not at council yet that we can discuss and potentially move forward. But that said, I would agree with Commissioner Jose that you take something that's halfway there and give it another push rather than something that doesn't have any visibility yet and that is a heavier lift. Thanks.
I'm really supportive of this conversation. I really appreciate the dialogue between Commissioner Angus and Commissioner Jose. And we'll just offer that, I was at the Bureau of Plan Sustainability during the first iteration of this work being worked on, and the pushback from exactly the stakeholders that you'd imagine on this was extremely swift, very, very fierce. And I think that any work on this is going to bring out some very tough dynamics for the council to work through. And to find themselves in alignment, whose goals they want to be in alignment with on this. So this will be a tough one. I know that Commissioner Charity is well aware of some of those dynamics based off of her organization's work on it. Thank you all for the questions. I appreciate the conversation.
Okay, thanks for that clarification too, CSO Vivian. I think we're at time here, so why don't we take a short little break? I think, what do we have for the break? We have 10 minutes for the break. We'll return at 1:55 for the rest. And yeah, see you soon. Commissioner Charity, do you want to facilitate the rest of the meeting? I'm happy to do so as well.
The slides are listed on who is asked to
Oh,
facilitate each section. So
have
if you
I
just
missed
look,
that?
yeah, it's on the slide.
Oh, okay.
You have to click notes on the bottom.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I don't have that option. Okay, that's why. Mine is, I need to download PowerPoint on the system.
Well, it is me next. So welcome back, everyone, from the
Oh,
break.
good. I was feeling it.
Yes, welcome back, everyone, from the break. And do bear with us as Vivek and I get used to being co-chairs of the committee and ironing out all the little co-chair presenting details. The next item on our agenda, we have 30 minutes, and it will be another briefing from CSO Vivian. So thank you so much. Next slide. Let me make sure I'm in the right spot. Vivian, if you want to go ahead, I've lost my spot.
No worries. Welcome back, everyone. Again, I'm Chief Sustainability Officer Vivian Satterfield. Like I said, I warned you all you'd be hearing a lot from me today, but I hope it's all great information. Let's go ahead. The next slide I want to move us to is to the outcome of this is to have a shared understanding of some of the committee priorities discussed in last month's meeting. So this part of it is really focusing on staff, what we heard directly from the conversation that you all had. And then I want to offer what is the city context around some of those priorities, just to help like match, so we all have the same baseline of understanding. And so this is the only slide, but I'll be talking through sort of the 4 areas in which I want to be able to offer you some additional feedback and concepts around. I'm really excited by the conversation I just heard in the previous part of our meeting here. I'm really support the alignment that I'm starting to see about how this committee's goals is really focusing on, policies that can be feasibly passed, especially with the recognition of urgency, the sort of greenhouse gas emission, benefits, and also can be moved along with some urgency as well. So,
Vivian, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm not seeing a slide, and I just want to make sure that others are, if I'm missing it.
yeah, can folks all see the slide that says committee priorities
Okay.
on their screen?
Apologies then, that's on my end.
Okay, thanks for letting us know, Wing. I hope you can troubleshoot that. And so the 4 concepts that I'll be talking through here today is listed on this slide. What I will offer that I omitted, but that you all did talk about, was really on the authority of the position that I'm in, the CSO position and coordination. I need to really work with that on the city administrator side in that relationship. And I think that's a little bit outside of the scope of this committee, not right size for that. Again, I think that for the topic of climate budgeting, which I know came up in the climate justice audit and also came up here, I think that this is also quite not right size for the goals of this committee at this point in time. But I do want to offer that the climate budgeting will be a part of the next climate action plan. And then briefly did also hear this committee speak quite a bit about protecting the benefits of the Portland Clean Energy Fund. And for right now, I'll just kind of put a pin in that because I do believe that's outside of this commission's purview and is with the PCEF's committee's role. And so that's why this list is just for the purposes of this conversation is contained to these 4 priorities. So that's just a bit of the filter that I want to offer you. So I'll just go ahead and start at the top with the municipal energy strategy. So I kind of want to talk through a number of components because I actually think this is an area in which there's kind of these 2 policy pathways that I see. One of them is on the existing and new buildings, and then what we could be doing on new construction only. And again, the context for this is that the full commission, the Sustainability and Climate Commission, had a briefing from subject matter experts back in March. So if you're curious and want to refresh, I'll go back to that March conversation on the municipal energy strategy. We're talking about Big C City. And so just to offer you some concepts around this, electrification and or net zero are not currently required in the city's own green building policy. And so while we have a lot of background that helps support some of these ideas, such as the net zero carbon declaration that was signed by Mayor Wheeler in 2018, that actually commits the city to net zero municipal energy by 2030, and examples from other jurisdictions, there's a lot of work that we could be doing to further the city's work towards that overarching goal. There has been a citywide report and analysis that was done by the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability's subject matter expert, Paul Hawkins, who came and presented that information in March to the full commission. And we already have a good sense of which buildings and facilities could be impacted by a municipal energy strategy that offers a goal towards electrification and or net zero. So if we wanted to look at just existing and new buildings, it would likely be council that would need to take action. And then it could be implemented alongside the mayor and city administrator. The caveat being that we would need to append some city attorney analysis to just make sure that we're following the right pathways for that. And that any sort of policy draft would need to be drafted alongside a subject matter expert. So I would be bringing in Paul Hawkins to help support the conversation on that. And that we would likely need to also take a phased approach for existing buildings. And that's an area in which we would need more analysis, especially in terms of the cost and how much some of those technical specs would cost and the impact it would have on city budget for existing and new buildings. If we wanted to look at the other policy pathway in which we're just examining new construction, again, that could be more likely just be implemented with the mayor and city administrator side of things without necessarily having to go through and touch on council. But again, with the caveat that I want to go ahead and talk with our city attorney to kind of make sure we're understanding who needs to kind of be consulted. I'll offer that, in this point in time, it's a bit of like, not just like what's legally standing, what pathway, but also sometimes you want to just have like political smarts and awareness of like how and when do we engage council. So I kind of want to offer that as a caveat to what I'm sharing now in terms of like where we're thinking, what pathway would it have to take. So existing and new buildings, likely through city council and could be implemented by the mayor and city administrator. For just focusing on a new building policy for the city, again, big C city, that could likely be implemented just with the mayor and city administrator. That would also require me to bring in some of the subject matter experts on that at BPS. New construction could be less costly, but also could have less impact. For example, right now, there's only 5 city facilities that are planned and under this new construction that could fall under a new construction policy. And if it is a policy that's looking at new construction, it couldn't be retroactively applied. So I just want to kind of be cognizant of the current scale. We're just not building a whole heck of a lot of things right now. And so therefore, it's unlikely to have a much future impact because that's, again, it's tied to the city's ability to build new buildings. And so those are kind of the 2 kind of policy pathways I want to offer on the municipal energy strategy and how to further an electric building policy. And so any sort of next steps around this would obviously invite the commission to weigh in, and then I would need to go and make a decision to pursue based off of feedback. And then again, understanding if this is a new policy that it would need to go to council, or if it's an existing policy that can be implemented by the mayor or city administrator. But I see that Commissioner Charity, you've got your hand up, so I'll pause there.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Charity. Real quick, just to clarify, we're really talking in this instance only about city-owned property.
That's right.
Right. Okay.
That's right. We kind of use big C, little c sometimes to kind of describe the difference between the city of Portland owned properties.
Got you.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that meant either, so thank you.
Yeah. So thanks for that clarification. And again, because we're kind of, the container that we're talking about is municipal energy. Yeah. Any other sort of Commissioner Angus, I see your hand up.
Yeah. So if it were just new buildings, I think I would agree fully with your observation that, that hardly moves the needle any visible distance whatsoever. whereas existing buildings, are a bigger bite out of it. But even existing municipal buildings, that's something that is, I think, necessary but not sufficient. Um, and 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 maybe there are some smaller pieces of existing buildings that we could get done sooner. I, weatherizing existing buildings, can be a much bigger task than, say, going in and simply trading out existing, furnaces for more efficient space heating and water heating equipment. And something that simply said, we're going by, within the next 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, we're going to pull the plug on any fossil fuel combustion that is presently being used to heat or cool, our facilities. That would be a significant retrofit. That would also, I think, be a relatively simpler one than weatherizing, buildings, that are very different one from another, and really are each one presents a different challenge. But the equipment, the heating and cooling equipment, you know, can frequently be, you can move through that a lot faster because there are similar tasks that are dealt with by similar pieces of equipment. So I would not be especially happy with something that is just new buildings. I would be happy with something that included existing municipal buildings, maybe starting with removing fossil fuel combustion first and then moving on to weatherization. And none of that gets to the much larger question of retrofitting of imposing new standards on new construction, new residential and commercial construction in the city, and retrofitting existing facilities. And because those are much bigger bites of the apple, they're things that we ought to be addressing as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Charity, do you still have your hand raised, or?
Yeah, I just like one other clarifying after that. Electrification is not the same as weatherization. So just to be clear, like you're talking electrification, right?
Yes.
No, yeah, I'm asking Vivian,
Yes.
that's what she's talking
Yes.
about. Yeah, because electrification is what I think the goal should be, and weatherization is just a part of that work. I wouldn't even focus on weatherization. Electrification encompasses all if you're doing it properly. And I think passing passing something like this at city-owned buildings is a great way to then test it and use it as a way to bring that into law for beyond city-owned buildings. If we can get it through city first and then look at the broader goals around electrification in the state for any building upgrades.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Commissioner Charity. I think that there's a lot to be said about the city saying, we've done it first, and we know we can lead by example, and we know how complex and how challenging and how costly it can be, and to help lead by example. Just in the interest of time, I've got 3 more topics to touch on, and I'll go ahead and move us to heat resiliency and adaptation. So just to offer you some background, a heat adaptation and management report currently exists within the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. Within that report, there's recommendations for the city to consider for heat adaptation management and response. It's a research report that has case studies, but it does not offer policy development or implementation strategy in the report. It can be also an additional resource for community groups who are advocating for climate justice and shade equity as well. And so there's a bit of a menu of options approach in this report where it offers policy action solutions. One of those that I want to go ahead and lift up is on resilience hubs, because the Portland Clean Energy Fund is in a preliminary stage and is providing community funding. And there's also a connection to some of the other work that we've been doing, such as on the municipal energy strategy, to think about how city facilities can offer a geographic place to be a resilience hub in, for future weather events and whatnot. There's also an environmental justice mapping tool. Again, PSEP is in some of the preliminary stages of that, and the planning part of planning and sustainability is working on a demographic vulnerability map that could ideally also be a citywide tool, but currently still kind of looking at the challenges with moving from the old form of government into the new one. A lot of bureaus are still using their own preferred maps to sort of map this vulnerability. So some of these things will inevitably shift, but just kind of want to give you a baseline understanding of where things are at now. And we, one of the recommendations on the policy front is also for a heat adaptation and management plan, but that is currently not drafted because it's currently not that work is currently not resourced in the city. So I just want to offer that even though the report offers these recommendations, there's varying levels of acting on them. In terms of implementation, nature-based solutions has a significant area of work, such as tree maintenance. For trees in the right-of-way in targeted neighborhoods. Both the Portland Clean Energy Fund and the Urban Forestry Division are already working on it. There's also the private property tree maintenance assistance that has been focused on current targeted neighborhoods. Basically, the program offers maintenance to property owners and incentivizes tree planting in areas without that viable sidewalk space. We're also talking about cooling corridors in nature-based solutions. So similar to greenways, but they focus on urban heat management. So it's a mix of both those natural and then what we call engineered solutions. But that's currently not being worked on holistically or in a coordinated fashion. One of the other examples on nature-based solutions is for microforests on city-owned parcels. I will offer that there's no existing work on this locally. And then the last one I'll offer in nature-based solutions on the implementation side is on tree planting for heat resilience guidelines. The Bureau of Planning and Sustainability is currently working on this and updating the Portland plant list to reflect our changing climate and some of the guidance on that as well. So that's kind of the nature-based solutions part. Now let's think about our engineered solutions, such as cool roofs. So the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability is currently working to loosen those existing zone amendments for eco roofs and solar PV, but a smart surfaces ordinance could help that work along. And additionally, for shade-built structures, we could require those in areas where tree planting is prohibited for a variety of reasons. That would require some zoning changes as well. That's why this work has predominantly been nested in the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability because of that strong nexus with our zoning code and zoning laws. So other priority areas that we've talked about. So thinking about environmental justice mapping, resilience hubs, street tree maintenance, and tree planting guidelines, that's all already happening at some baseline level within the city of Portland. Other options would require additional resources and then intra-bureau coordination to help move forward. The Sustainability and Climate Commission could support efforts to create this integrated climate vulnerability mapping tool, or we could also be interested in what Commissioner Dan's experience in Multnomah County could be, because they've done a lot of work on this front, what we could be learning from other jurisdictions as well. And then there is, and I kind of want to offer a bit of a star here, thinking about the mayor's climate priorities on when it comes to smart surfaces. So this is an area in which we could be pushing, the commission may want to choose to push an ordinance. And we have examples from other jurisdictions on what those smart surfaces, climate-friendly, surface ordinances can look like as well. So overall, I think that if you all are interested in this body of work, I would say that the committee would need a briefing, and I can coordinate an invitation from the committee to receive a briefing from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability on this. And there's a number of areas in which where we don't currently have resource to move it, the commission could play an advocacy role in saying that this needs to be resourced and that we need dedicated work focusing on that. I'll go ahead and pause there.
Commissioner Angus, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm sorry, Vivian, could you just clarify what what is meant by smart surfaces? If it's not cool roofs, then there must be some other things.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Angus. Elaine helpfully dropped in the chat. There's a whole variety, there's a whole variety of work that can fall under smart services policy. So two of the co-sponsors within the city of Portland actually come from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability and also the Bureau of Transportation. So because obviously they do a lot of engineered solutions. So this is an area in which you can think about nature-based solutions, you can think about engineered solutions, you can think about paving, climate smart paving as well. But those are just some of the examples, and I would offer that coalition has been extremely helpful for us to share out our work and also learn from other jurisdictions as well about the variety of different concepts that fall underneath that.
Commissioner Vivek, you have your hand up.
Hi.
You want-
Yeah, just a brief touch on this. It seems like this is I was just reviewing the document that you had referenced, CSO Vivian, and I think one of the things that stands out is that with lacking a specific policy or lacking some kind of way to activate this work, it becomes really hard to make any of this wonderful heat adaptation management report like real. And so part of me is just wondering kind of the extent to which this could potentially have like areas that you mentioned, whether it be Resilience Hub, whether it be, I mean, there's a lot happening with tree planting already through Parks and Rec and urban forestry. I'm just trying to think like, are there aspects of this where you see a policy potentially being more viable or less, the spectrum of more and less viable? Like, are there places where, this report could land well with the combination of the climate justice audit that was also recently released? Like, are there synergies here for moving a policy of some kind?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Co-Chair Vivek, and we'll offer that, I recommend that you all invite a briefing on it, and I can ask staff to do a preliminary analysis that helps offer some viability for some of the recommendations that are in there.
Okay.
And I know that the director of the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability has been very amenable to offering a briefing for this team here.
Oh, great.
I think
Okay.
it's a great report. So yeah, we're all quite supportive of some of the recommendations in there. And I mean, you all are familiar with the city of Portland. Someone needs to ask for it in order for it to become real. So
Yeah, and just to follow up, and given the fact that we're in May and moving into the summer months, it feels like there might be a nice, like timely option to be able to do this. And given Commissioner Dan's on the on this committee, and given all the work Multnomah County and now Metro is doing on this as well, feels like a pretty great way to collaborate across multiple jurisdictions.
yeah, I'm supportive of that. In the interest of time,
Yep.
and not to short shrift the two other topics, I'll go ahead and just move us into talking about transportation. There's so much in transportation, so my comments are actually going to be fairly brief here. Obviously, hopefully you all are aware of the utility fee that just passed at City Council that will be applicable to Portlanders starting in 2027. Want to be really clear, that's actually solving a budget and operational need overall on the TUF, and it did pass by council 9-3. In terms of transportation, there's also the pricing options for equitable mobility report, which prior to me joining the city, I also worked extensively on that report. It has both near-term and future actions at the Bureau of Planning or at the Bureau of Transportation as well. In transportation, I want to just remind the commission or the committee here that our youth members have really lifted up areas in which youth mobility and youth pass is still a priority. That does potentially also bring us into other pricing conversations as well for various populations and their specific mobility needs. All of this is sort of in the realm of budget constraints, especially for existing policy that doesn't have resources to be fully implemented. and also political feasibility barriers. I think that any conversation around congestion pricing, continuing to price parking, we've seen these become really divisive, hot button issues. I have my own opinion because obviously we see a direct correlation and relationship between the amount of people driving and the price of gasoline, for example. We see that in our emissions inventory. We know that to be true, that people can take other options, will take other options if certain options are priced too much. But this is a dynamic space. And I know that, for example, Commissioner Angus has a lot of experience and a lot of expertise in this, and many of you do as well on transportation. And so anything related to transportation, I would probably lean on our partners at PBOT in order to offer a briefing on any one of these things. Again, either the TUF, having just passed, POEM, or other youth pass and pricing options. I'll go ahead and pause there before I move into state legislative session.
Commissioner Angus, you're the only one I see with your hand up right now. So
Yeah. So, Vivian, I would certainly encourage us to pull, the PBOT people, and if there are Metro people on this as well, since a lot of the transportation planning takes place there, and even ODOT, if they have anybody left to answer the phone down there, but to pull some folks into a discussion on transportation pricing generally and congestion pricing in particular, and see if we can, get a discussion going on that subject.
anyone else have anything? We have a couple of minutes left in this section.
Okay, and in the interest of time, I'll just go ahead and move us to the last bullet point that's on this slide, which is a lot of interest, I know, in state legislation. So much of our work is interdependent on working both with the state and also participating actively in the legislative session. So just for awareness, think back to one of the first meetings that we had of the Sustainability and Climate Commission, in which the Office of Government Relations came out and sort of emphasize the level of cooperation needed, because the city does need to speak as one city, and that also applies to our advisory bodies as well. And so just to give you an awareness of sort of the process, the Office of Government Relations will start sending out to the bureaus and the administration what's called issue sheets in early May. This is typically really general guidance that offers them a helpful primer and a general list of potential legislation. It's not detailed, but it kind of is topic-based. We try to bucket things, for example, like sustainability bucket, transportation bucket, good governance bucket. And so the deadline for us to start submitting those issue sheets is going to be this summer in mid to late July. And then that office starts vetting those submissions, more concertedly in August. Then the Office of Government Relations brings a full list of those identified issues to council in early September, so they can provide input on those priorities and to influence a first draft list for the Office of Government Relations. They then circulate a first draft and gather input from both the administrative and legislative branches. And the goal is having an early December work session together that finalizes the final draft of the city's legislative position. And then it's followed by a council vote before the end of December. And so I just want to offer you the kind of the general pipeline and the process, and then leading to council approval of our overall goals. I want to go ahead and offer just a few caveats with that timeline. The Office of Government Relations always reminds us to be mindful of how many of the bills the city will have to lead on. There's areas in which we put together issue sheets where the city is being proactive, we are leading, but then there are thousands of pieces of legislation that subject matter experts, staff, and our lobby teams are going to be playing defense on, evaluating, keeping the finger on the political pulse to see how to advise the city participating in. And I just want to offer that, because this is a very difficult budget season for the city, that the Office of Government Relations is likely losing capacity in this upcoming fiscal year. So I want to offer that we need to be realistic about how many bills we can really ask the Office of Government Relations to truly lead on, while also managing taking positions on all the thousands of other bills that will be kind of bird dogging. There's already a few items identified by council that the city will have to lead on. That's already going to be taking our capacity because we've received those signals. And so things that I'll be looking for is opportunities to piggyback on issues or bills that various organizations and coalitions are already working on that helps make our capacity have greater strength when we're speaking in greater voices and big numbers. For those of you who work frequently in legislative session, you know you can never do things alone. You need to be working in partnership and coalition for a lot of reasons. And I know that there's some things that the commissioners have asked for before, such as, for example, the Make Polluters Pay bill that we know will be back in the upcoming legislative session. And the coalition has already approached multiple councilors about getting that legislation on our agenda. So this is a really dynamic space in which the Sustainability and Climate Commission is not the only actor. And we do have to think about council's participation, and we do have to think about the city's capacity as well. So in terms of next steps, while one pathway is that the committee could review issue sheets and help support their submittal to later this summer to the Office of Government Relations, I think that actually requires just a lot of preparation and understanding, and it could take like the entirety of our June and July meetings if you wanted to go that route. Another pathway, and one I would recommend, is that we should wait and see what the city has the capacity to lead on coming out of this upcoming budgetary session, and also get a better sense from council, where they want to go as well, and that the commission then could help lend support or capacity on climate-related policy that we see coming out in that space. I'll go ahead and pause there.
Okay, we actually time-wise do need to move on to the next part of our agenda, which is committee next steps. Well, hopefully the outcome of this is discussion and recommendations to CSO Vivian on committee next steps. So perfect timing. It's almost like you guys plan these agendas, right? So in this next slide here, we will be talking about a couple of the discussion points. As we've already mentioned, the mayor and council, our council leading priorities is building decarbonization. The mayor's priorities are transportation related, mobility and pollution reduction, phasing out petroleum, diesel, energy and resiliency, which is the municipal energy strategy, and weather shelters. The CSO goals for the committee are want committee to work on something that moves the needle and we can win. I think we all many of us have mentioned that. Exercise our advisory role on policy, focus on one policy that can be feasibly passed within the upcoming fiscal year, concurrent with the development of the CAP, a policy that is specific, nimble, right-sized for existing capacity are also priorities. So here are a couple of questions they're proposing to us. How do we connect the work in this committee to the city council's and mayor's priorities? And if the committee could only advance one recommendation this year, what should it be and why? So I guess that I will open it up for that discussion time now. So who would like to kick off? And these are our specific questions that we're being asked to talk about. Let me just make sure I got everybody on the screen. Okay, Commissioner Angus, you have your hand up.
Sure, just to give everybody a big fat target here. So as I said at the beginning, I'm not sure we can winnow this down to one recommendation, but I think we could come up with one or two recommendations in each of what, at least to my mind, are the three critical areas: transportation, built environment, and resiliency. And on the built environment, if this characterization is correct, that Vivian and Commissioner Jose described for the measure that's in front of City Council, then I can see the logic that was proposed for us endorsing that and putting that as, a high, if not the highest priority for moving it forward. The other built environment measure that I would argue for is the electrification of city, space and water heating loads, and setting a schedule for removing us from from any fossil fuel combustion by such and such a date. On transportation, I think that that we all, subject to having here discussions and briefings on congestion pricing, that the linkage between congestion pricing and transit, and particularly transit access for low-income households, is an important one that we are not moving nearly as fast as we could on. And so I would argue that that's one that we need to have in our transportation bucket, if you will. And there is another transportation one which we have not talked about, but I've talked about it with Council Member Novick and with a number of others, and that is that as the cost of driving your car gets higher and higher, and the cost of maintaining it equally gets high, and people are losing access to that degree of mobility, that we look at the kind of electric vehicle car share programs that have been successful, particularly in the Twin Cities, but in other places as well, and see whether it would be possible for us to deploy a demonstration, EV car share system in one or two or three venues in the city, and see if that addresses some of the mobility issues, as I say, particularly, but not exclusively, for low-income households. And with respect to resiliency, I skimmed through what cool surfaces means, and it means all of the surfaces, and so I'm not sure that may be too many surfaces to take up all at once, but I think it is certainly an interesting option that we could pursue, but also prioritize which surfaces you try to move forward on and when. So those would be my recommendations, I guess, for this committee to move forward to putting an agenda together that the full commission can review, and we hope adopt and move to the city council. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm just going to draw the attention back to the questions we're being asked to discuss. How do we connect the work of the committee to the city councils and mayor's priorities? And if we could only advance one, what would it be and why? And Commissioner Jose, you have your hand up.
Yes. I'm going to tackle the second one first, and I'm not going to give you one recommendation. I do think it's important for us to only have one, maybe two recommendations that work in a year. I don't agree that we need to have a few per section. I think when you have too many recommendations, you don't actually get any of them done well, and you end up diluting your influence. And the reason I don't have one to recommend is because I would want to get a list of, for instance, I would take the mayor's priorities and put them in a spreadsheet, put a column to who's the one that's going to be leading the charge on that or being able to implement it. Is it council? Is it mayor? Has any work been done? And then different thing, how budget intensive is it? And then see what that comes out with. Because you could have an idea, and then that's a whole brand new idea that has no reason and no chance of moving forward. So I'd want to research more what things that we've thrown out there or what is already on the plate. And I say start with the mayor's platform because we know we have at least one actor that already supports those things, right? So if we know some of the other priorities from like council members, then we can put them on the list. And then that's how mine would work. You have the list, and then that list can be referred to later, right? Because the committee doesn't end after a year. So once we're done working with one, we'd still have that list, and we can track progress and see how things are done. That's kind of how I would tackle it, how I would narrow it down to the one recommendation. I don't think it's wise to just be like, I think this is great. While that is good for passion, there are so many pieces to getting policy actually passed through council and getting implemented properly that I would want to have way more information than just, I really like this idea, or this is my idea, or this is an idea I'm passionate about that I've heard good things about. I want to know more about different parts of that idea and how it's being shepherded through the process. And I think that's a good way we connect our work to their priorities. We can completely come up with a whole new ideas that it's no one's priority and no one's working on. But like I said, I think that's much harder when we've thrown out a lot of things that already are in line with the mayor's priorities, with some stuff city council's working on. So why not work on things that are aligned, especially during a really, really hard budget atmosphere where there are way more limits to what are the things that they're going to want to try to shepherd through and push through than let's say another year where we can have a million things going.
Thank you, Commissioner Jose. I have been landing kind of in a similar place listening to the list today and the different priorities, as I feel like there are many good ideas. Most of them are really good ideas, but I agree, some kind of like chart analysis under some real key categories that are beyond like the climate results that we might see out of it, but the costs, the staffing, where it already is in a political process. Is this something that already has support, not just in city council and the mayor, but does it have support in communities, in the advocacy world, so that you brought up the Make Polluters Pay bill. We were actively part of that. Like, this is stuff that, again, has to go through coalition. So I would feel more comfortable personally selecting a recommendation or two recommendations with a bit more information on that kind of political side and cost analysis because I agree as well. We have a budget crunch this year that we know about, but we also know as the federal cuts start to hit in a year or two, it's going to be even worse at the state level, and that will trickle down to the city. So any asks that have numbers attached and money attached are just going to be very hard to get past anywhere. And even if that is as simple as staffing and not some other large pool of money. So I would really just echo Commissioner Jose that I would need some kind of comparison chart and what we might include in that. I'm sure we have different ideas based on work we've done in the past, but I feel uncomfortable just picking one right now off the top of just to say, oh, my personal preference is X. I don't know that that is the one that has the best chance of winning. And I think as a committee, having a quick success in our first year is also really important to show that we can do this as a group. And it might not be the one that has the biggest impact on GHG reduction, but having a win is also important when you start off. So Commissioner Dan, thank you for raising your hand. I'll pass the floor to you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Charity. Commissioner Dan, definitely agree with what Commissioner Jose and Commissioner Charity are saying. And also I might just add another lens. It's like So what's happening already with PSEF and other things that are already going in some directions? Where is there maybe a gap or something that the committee could fill? And then also, where is there a little bit of momentum, with the entire county or metro region that's also in that overlap of the borders of Portland? And I think there's like a pretty, there's some Venn diagrams we could make pretty quickly on some of that then also overlaps with what the mayor is hoping for. And I agree with Jose as well, of like, well, if we do pick one of the mayor's priorities in particular, then we already have one champion, right? But I think there's also a lot of community champions out there, and a lot of this engagement has been done around climate work for a long time. And so we don't necessarily have to like do a whole engagement re-engagement process, but we can kind of look already at, say, the climate justice plan, as well as another lens for this and some of the work that's already being done. So yeah, as far as picking one, I agree. One for our committee, it would be really difficult to choose right at this moment without, a little bit of kind of extra analysis. And actually, I had a question on how we might want to go about that.
Commissioner Vivek, you're the only one who hasn't spoken yet. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I thanks, Commissioner Charity. It feels like we're still at like 5,000, 10,000 feet up, and I'm just trying to I was just looking at these slides related to the bullet points that CSO Vivian had shared, and I guess I'm just struggling to try to figure out what's the needle to thread here, and I can't even quite get to that level. And so I guess it feels very broad. It feels very much like in order to be able to champion something, we could, given this information, we could probably be relatively generic and say these are things we really stand behind, and this one is really standing out above the rest. And I feel like in order for me to do that, I just don't know. Yeah, like what has already been said. Yeah, like exactly what's been said. I don't know quite how to pinpoint what would be the thing. I was staring a lot at that slide around decarbonization, because there was a point related to conversion of office to residential, and I'm just thinking about the housing and all of the intense focus on housing and the abundance agenda around housing. And I guess I'm just thinking about that in relation to conversion, in relation to all these other, as a housing measure, combined with the committee's priorities that came up as well. And so I haven't gotten anywhere with that, but I just started going down a rabbit hole thinking about that. But anyway, yeah, no, I don't have a lot to add to the conversation at this point. Just still trying to take it in.
Commissioner Jose, is your hand up again? Okay.
I'm just going to tackle a little bit Commissioner Dan's question on how we go about doing this analysis. I know when I was on GTAC, we did a lot of the analysis ourselves. We would decide who would do it, and then I remember we were researching different peer cities on a million different things. So one person took how they do their budget websites. That's what I did. I went into every major city's web. We had a list of 30 cities, major cities, and I went to their websites and tried to find their budget website and logged had different columns for how fast it was to find it, how easy it was, what kind of the contents, and we all had different topics, and that's how we came to a lot of the recommendations we gave to the city for the new form of government. So we could do something like that. I don't know if we can get an Excel set up that they can do that through the city, or because Google Docs we can't do. So I think the technology we might need help figuring out with Elaine or Vivian. But if we just had a spreadsheet where we could put in one column of all these, get the slides, the things we've talked about, and just make a column with all of those, and then we can think of things we want to know, like budget implications, like Charity said, staffing necessities, where it is on the process, coalitions that might be interested in supporting this work because there are certain things that pop that we'll talk about that we know exactly what kind of groups are exactly the kind of group that would help you with this, right? And we could, is it council or is it mayor? Is it, just things like that? Is there already a champion that has been talking about this? Like we talked about Candace, Commissioner Avalos doing some of the work on one thing, and we talked about the mayor doing. So if we just made a chart and we can go in and say, everyone go in and fill out one line or research one topic, or two topics, we'll just count, and by X date, then we could just go in and do it and get it done. I think if we break it up and everyone has a little piece to do, it becomes a very easy thing than one person having to research a lot of things. But that would just be my suggestion. I don't know if anyone else has a different way to do it.
Commissioner Angus had his hand up yet next, and then Commissioner Dan put something in the chat with a reply to you on that particular house.
Yeah.
Commissioner Angus, you had your hand up.
Yes. So I'd certainly concur with the notion that, we ought to put these ideas down on paper, and we ought to have a level of analysis of them, of their different aspects, and we ought to pull the city agencies in to brief us, where they have experts to do so. But I would hope that when we're developing the spreadsheet that we are thinking about, this issue not just in the smaller considerations or the most immediate considerations of, costs and political prospects and, who is now for it and who is not. I can certainly tell you, at least from my personal relationships with, the mayor and members of the council, that, they have not necessarily thought all these things through, and that they are, at least the ones I know, are open to, persuasion to approach something a little differently if there is value to be had. And so I guess the other two considerations that need to be at least implicitly, if not explicitly, on the spreadsheet, one is what is the value that is being delivered, in terms of, its ability to reduce emissions, its ability to reach, people and both alter their way of operating and deal with their vulnerabilities. And we also need, I guess, a column that talks about how we're sending, what kind of message we are sending. If we are sending a message that we can deal with, this issue in small bites spaced out over many years, that's just plain wrong. That's not the way greenhouse gases and climate change are accumulating and pounding into this community. We really have to do some fairly big things, and we have to do them relatively expediently. And the message that this commission, I think, needs to send to the council and through the council to the community is, this is a big issue, and it does require substantial commitments and solutions. And a climate commission, is not going to take a position that, we can do this in small increments over extended periods of time, because climate change is just not going to wait for that. So I would hope that, while we do pick, some issues where we can move relatively quickly because there's the support, we may also want to have some issues or some recommendations where, it's a much bigger ask and it's not going to fly through the city council, in the next year or two, but it's important enough that it ought to be on the list, and we ought to be communicating through what we identify, we ought to be communicating the significance of this issue for the city of Portland.
Thank you. Vivian, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to appreciate this conversation and offer that. I did mention that climate team staff did offer a preliminary quick analysis of cost, decarbonization benefit, the benefit to community economic development, and then the level of complexity. I can go ahead and direct staff to sort of clean up that list a little bit and offer a little bit of explanation for each category. And we can build out a first initial template for what I'm hearing you all desire in terms of a spreadsheet. But we can offer input and then offer a level of preliminary analysis to get it started and kicked off.
Thank you. And just I'll add one last thing to remind that this group is supposed to be thinking of things that can happen in this next fiscal year. So it is like this group's tasked with the immediate, while the whole commission isn't necessarily tasked with that. Because I hear Commissioner Angus's call to like, there is no time. There is no time really. We need to be thinking big things, and that sits strongly with me. So thank you for saying that. We still have, I think, 5 minutes for this if we need it. If we don't, we could move on to next steps and reminders. Commissioner Angus, your hand is up.
Yeah, so this is, I guess, in the nature of next steps, but if I do think we should take Vivian up on her offer and her staff's offer to start building the spreadsheet, putting it together, and that members of this committee ought to communicate, I guess, with her and with each other what kinds of criteria we think ought to be on that spreadsheet, and what relatively immediate measures. But I'm not, when I say immediate measures, that doesn't necessarily mean immediate that can be accomplished within the next year. It may be immediate that something big needs to be started, because it's going to take a while to get it accomplished. And if we wait a year or two, that's a year or two further that we don't get it accomplished. And by that I am mostly talking about the idea of congestion pricing, because that's probably the biggest one and the most daunting one, but it's also one where I think there are opportunities to move the community forward. But you got to get started somewhere. And I may be the only person on this committee who thinks that is worth moving. And if so, then I'll be outvoted, and life goes on. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will pass it over to Co-Chair Vivek to finish out the next few slides.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Charity. Just moving into post-discussion here, we're in committee, we have last few minutes here of committee feedback form, and filling out that feedback form in the chat. I think there's going to be a chat link if it's not there already for the feedback form. There we go. Thanks, Elaine. And and do we want to fill this out while we're here so we get a higher turnout, or do we want to have people fill it out later? I'm inclined to have everyone fill it out now if we can.
Hi, I just tried clicking it, and it says this form is currently not accepting responses.
Okay.
Did I do something wrong? Probably.
No, looks like Commissioner Jose noted the same thing in the chat. We fix that.
Yeah, I see Elaine working on it right now. Just thanks for your patience.
Okay. Fixed. So let's try this again.
Got it.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Oh. All right. So get started on that, and we'll plan on coming back. Our next commission meeting or committee meeting is on policy and implementation meetings on Tuesday, June 2nd, the first Tuesday of June, 1 to 3 p.m., and same Zoom system. Anything to close us out? Any last comments? All right. Well, thanks all. Thanks, Vivian. Thanks, Elaine. Thanks, Wing. Really appreciate your support, getting us all talking about the important stuff, and we'll hopefully follow up with that. I think spreadsheet system, and then come back together potentially at the June meeting for us to deliberate on that. If not, yeah, sooner. But we'll plan on coming back together in June. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Elaine. Note in the chat. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you all. Appreciate the conversation. See you soon.
Yeah. Bye.